Have you always known that you're on a soul path? And have you wondered how to gain real insight into the steps along your own unique journey? Welcome everyone, I'm Sarah Main, and thank you for joining me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. I'm so glad to have you along. Damayanti means peace and calm. Damayanti sheds a light for your soul through the wisdom that shines in the universal language of Sanskrit. Damayanti is the show that speaks to your soul, connects with your soul, and enriches your soul. Join me now on Damayanti, the show for your soul, and be inspired and uplifted by the beautiful light of this profound, timeless wisdom. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to my new show, Damayanti, for your soul. And this is a show that provides all sorts of wonderful things for your soul. It speaks to your soul, connects with your soul, and feeds your soul, inspires and strengthens your soul. And I've got a wonderful guest today, and he's a very special guest. He's a special friend of mine, Dr. Gary Grohmann, and he's a scientist, he's a husband, father, and a grandfather. And most importantly, he's been meditating for many, many decades, dare I say about 40 probably. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Gary. Anyway, we're going to be looking at meditation, talking about meditation, the master key for your soul, because when we talk about providing for your soul and caring for your soul, you've got to start with meditation. And when I addressed that question, the first person that popped into my mind was Gary. And let's talk to Gary. So welcome, Gary. It's lovely to have you along.
It's lovely to be here, Sarah, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Wonderful. Well, let's kick off. And do you want to give us a brief background to who you are? Tell us as much as you want to tell us.
Oh, okay. Well, as you said, I am a father and a grandfather, and that's extremely important in my life, and it's been the center of life, of course, and really so wonderful to be fortunate to have a wonderful family and, of course, a good circle of friends, which has really been terrific. I studied science, and I'm a virologist by profession, and I've had a long career in research, and I recently so-called retired, but found myself consulting, so particularly with COVID vaccines, and I do work in the area of vaccines. And at the moment, I'm consulting back to the World Health Organization on both COVID and influenza vaccines. So that's my career, so to speak. But there's more important things than that. There's been spiritual work and a journey from a very young age, in fact, as I think we all go through, of trying to work out who and what I am, and what I love and what I don't love, and so on. And that led me to the School of Philosophy, and I got introduced to meditation there, which I struggled with to start with, I have to say, but then really enjoyed and find it to be the center of my life now, in fact. And I've done a lot of teaching of mindfulness, and I've taught a little practical philosophy. And through the philosophy school, I also developed a very strong interest in the Sanskrit language. And that complemented my own upbringing in a German community where I could speak German, and the structures between Sanskrit and German seemed very familiar to me. I got interested in that for a while within the school. But prior to that, I had a very long interest and history, I suppose, of just quietly sitting down, coming through a Roman Catholic upbringing, boarding schools, Jesuit schools, where meditation was in fact first introduced, and the idea of reflection, the idea of self-examination were all important to me. But I was reflecting on it the other day when you asked me to join you, and I thought one of the most wonderful experiences I had, particularly as a young boy, was just sitting in the church quietly, either before or after everybody came. And it was then I really felt I started to meditate. because I really did feel this expansion and unity um, uh, between myself and everything around me, and between myself and God as well, and or what I perceived that to be at that time, and that was really quite a marvelous experience, very energizing. And so when I came to meditation through the School of Philosophy, it was a very natural thing in one way, but also a very difficult thing in another, because the system of meditation was so different. I'd come through a form of prayer and reflection and self-examination. And this suddenly introduced me to a thing called mantra meditation. And that, I must say, initially really threw me. But we can talk about it later. But I found that eventually to be a really wonderful journey, and a very different journey to what I'd experienced before. And I've been very grateful for the practice ever since.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. That's marvelous, full and rich background. So in relation to the early point, I just want to go back to the sort of origin. So you talked about this background in really a prayer-focused meditation, a reflection-focused meditation, where there seemed to be, in a sense, nothing there otherwise other than this sort of space and opportunity to commune with God directly, as in that sense. Did you find a natural inclination to that? Were you drawn to that immediately?
Absolutely. Yeah, look, I was absolutely drawn to that. Fortunate to have been in the care of really some wonderful nuns. And this was in a school at Campbelltown. And it was a religious community and a closed community. And that in itself had its own stillness, if you like. But just walking into that chapel and just sitting was, as a child between 5 and 12, a really wonderful experience, and I could just let everything go. And I would call it now just the ability to let the attention be free. And my mind wasn't cluttered and my heart was open. That was the important thing. Very easy for a child, of course, to have an open heart.
Yeah.
And I really remember those experiences very acutely before I myself went through the traumas of being a teenager, where everything seems to close down. But I always remember key moments in just sitting there. I can relate one wonderful experience. There was a man who came to the chapel every day to clean it. And having the role of an altar boy, we said Mass every day, and in Latin too, I might add. And sometimes we'd sing it. All wonderful experiences, in fact. But this man, that used to intrigue me. He'd come before we'd start, and he'd be cleaning the chapel. And then he would just sit down. And while I was getting dressed in my altar boy gear, I just said to him, I think I must have been about 8, and I said to him, "You just come here and sit. Why don't you stay for Mass?" And he looked at me and he said, "I love sitting here. I look at him and he looks at me." And I thought it was a really lovely moment. And and he just wanted to sit there. So sometimes I'd sit with him, and then I had the same or similar kind of experience of just being free. And now I would say the intention was completely free. It wasn't attached to anything in mind or heart or ideas or anything like this, or expectations, or what do I have to do now, or any thoughts like this. It was just the freedom of a child, which I think most children do experience from time to time, if not a lot more than we think as adults.
Yeah,
So
we just don't talk about it.
Yeah, a wonderful beginning to meditation. And the idea of meditation. So I was quite accepting of that sort of meditation, and then introducing a prayer. And later on, I found prayer basically to be of two types. One was quite objective, and being in Latin, it was very objective because it didn't particularly know the meaning. Or it could be subjective, like "Please God, help me pass my exams" or something like that.
So how do you practice now? What do you do? Because I know you then were introduced to mantra meditation. So for someone listening now who's thinking about meditation, or who has practiced other forms of meditation, how do you practice now? What do you do? This is just purely individual? Do you sit on a couch, a chair? How long for? What do you do? Someone was interested.
Well, I sit on a chair, I make sure the body is comfortable and relaxed. I try and let all tensions go, all physical tensions, and I spend a bit of time doing that. Say 3 or 4 minutes, maybe, just to make sure my shoulders are not near my ears, or there's some movement in the body, or my eyes are fluttering, or the heart is beating too fast. So just let everything relax for a few minutes.
Right.
And a simple way to do that is to feel your feet on the floor and just connect with the senses one by one, ending up with the listening. And that's quite easy and simple, and anybody can do that anytime. And that's my anytime practice.
Right.
And then I just focus on the breathing a little, and pranayama, which is really a stop in the breath and then letting it go again. That helps the body relax as well. But it does bring the mind to peace, I find. So I like doing that for a few minutes. And then sometimes I chant a Sanskrit prayer. Not always, but it does expand the listening and at the same time open the heart. And I found with meditation, it's really important to open the heart, but that's generally not how you begin, particularly with a mantra. It tends to be in your head all the time. But that's how I begin, and I would meditate for half an hour.
Right.
And I would just allow the mantra to repeat. And in the beginning, it's a little bit forced, and that's fine. Got to start somewhere. For some people, it's quite natural and happens immediately. But for me, it doesn't. And I think everyone has individual experience of this. But for myself, there's an effort for sure. And it's called japa in the tradition. And just allow the mantra to repeat. And then at some point, and I don't know how this happens, this is the magic of mantra meditation, it seems to repeat entirely by itself, and I've got nothing to do with it. And it is really a marvelous thing, and my mind is perfectly at peace. And then the experiences vary almost from day to day. I can't say it's the same every day, but there is always a moment of absolute peace and stillness, bliss, love, whatever you want to call it. It's not necessarily a long time, but honestly, it's enough to make me want to come back and meditate again. And I like meditating twice a day, and often I just find myself, particularly in the afternoons, just wanting to sit down at about 2 or 3 p.m. and just sit for a quarter of an hour or 20 minutes, or however long it is. I don't even know sometimes how long it is.
We're going to take a break in a minute. So
Yeah.
So hold that thought, Gary, because I don't want you to give the best bits out right away. We'll leave a cliffhanger. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back shortly. And Gary's going to talk a bit more about his personal experiences, and very importantly, how to overcome some challenges. So we'll be back soon. Thanks a lot. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Damayanti, the show for your soul. And I've got my guest, Gary Grohmann. I'm Sarah Main, your host, and my wonderful guest, longtime friend and seasoned meditator, because our show is all about meditation, the master key for your soul. And you're getting gold here, everyone, because this is a meditator of can I say this, Gary? 40 years?
Yes.
All right. All right. Okay. And moving right along from that, this is the voice of experience, and you can hear it in Gary's voice, just this ease, this love, passion, devotion for meditation, and also the voice of experience of just not letting anything get in the way and put you off. So, and that's an important thing that we're going to cover off. So Gary talked about at the beginning, this starting went from a young boy, sort of a natural prayer-focused, reflection-focused meditation through the Catholic Church, which is his background tradition. And this was from a young child, and it was very natural. And then being drawn into philosophical studies and being introduced to mantra meditation, which is the repetition of a short syllable. And these are very powerful syllables. And then struggling with that initially because it's so different from, I'm summarizing Gary's background, summarizing, this sort of journey, but eventually falling in love with the mantra meditation. And Gary described how he practices every day. So Gary, just picking up the story, how has your meditation practice from those initial points of struggle where it was so different, so there's a sort of a cultural clash there for a little while, how has your practice evolved to this point? And then we're going to go into just some of the challenges that might help and how you've overcome them, which might help people who are listening.
Well, I think it's a really nice question, because the question of evolution is just so important in no matter what you do. And I found two aspects to this evolution. The transition from prayer to mantra meditation focus was difficult to start with, but only for me. I mean, I did struggle physically to sit up straight. I struggled to keep the mind quiet. I really struggled with the practice for some months before it suddenly worked by itself. But that's just me. That doesn't mean it's going to happen to everyone. And sometimes having a struggle with a particular thing is a good thing, because you work through it. And I was simply determined that I would work through this. So that was the first stage in the evolution, to really put in the effort and to have faith that there is something in this practice, as so many people do practice it and find benefit. But then there's another part when it was working by itself, so to speak. I really found that my heart opened up a lot, and that was a really unexpected thing. My mind thought this was a mental thing, but when the heart was touched and opened, then the mantra sound in the heart, really in the whole body and everywhere, ultimately unattached, was really a wonderful experience. And then I realized what gold I had been given with this practice. And the next part of the evolution was a more practical one, in that it flowed into my life. I found, really, I was enthusiastic a lot more about all the things I love, be it family or philosophy, meditation, work. And I found myself really throwing myself into work with enormous enthusiasm. So I think this increase of enthusiasm is the first stage in that evolution, but it's a very practical thing in the world. I found more efficiency and a better ability to attend. As a young boy, one thing I discovered straight away is that I like to daydream. And I think all boys do, but I found the mind dreaming about this and that and never giving attention. And I found that to be an interesting observation at the time when I was at high school and then university. I used to often ask myself the question, why can't I attend to this and simply write the essay or assignment, whatever it is? But it was a good question. And the reason is, of course, my mind was all over the place. But then meditation really helped to bring that attention into focus. And I could suddenly give attention to anything I did in the lab, or anything I did by giving a seminar or teaching at university, whatever it might be, anything with the children, anything in my relationship with my dear wife and friends and so on. You could really give attention to that and set everything else aside. And I think the meditation helped that thing, that side of life to evolve. I think the other thing that was quite obvious is that you make better decisions. You have this steadiness in your own thinking. And so you do use this discriminating power that we all have to make the right decision. So I found I wasn't jumping into things or shooting my mouth off or saying things inappropriately. I was much more careful about language. And I remember noticing that just about a year or so after starting to meditate. And I know you can achieve all these things through other ways, but and psychological ways in particular, and mindfulness and so on. But I found the meditation just took it to another level. And the other thing I found was, what comes to mind is a quote from Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, and from memory, I think it's this sequence. He says, watch your thoughts because they become words, and watch your words because they become actions. Watch your actions because they become habits, and watch your habits because they become character, and then I think the next one is character becomes your destiny.
Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that quote, or the import of that quote, has been with me for a while. I found that to be very relevant in meditation, because you use a word, you use a sound. It's not really a word, but it's a sound, and it stops these thoughts and it ameliorates your actions. And you watch your habits, and you do feel there are aspects in your character that change, particularly the bits you don't like. So that's because the habits have changed, and so presumably your destiny changes. So I found that to be extremely useful from the meditation as well. That it gives you this strength of character, and I think there are two other things that happened to me, at least, was that I, like most young people, I was fairly fearful. You're scared of what people think of you, or you're scared, will you ever get a job? Will you ever get married? Or why am I studying this? I mean, there's all sorts of thoughts that go through the mind and heart that create a certain level of fear. And to my delight, I found that a lot of these fears just disappeared. And I absolutely put that down to the meditation. I wasn't asking those sorts of questions anymore about myself. I wasn't too concerned about what other people thought, or living in the opinions of others, or anything like this. I was just myself, and I was happy with that. And that basically, I think, has led to a lot of success in my career. But of course, there are failures as well. You do things that don't work. But I think somehow the meditation prepares you not to get too caught up in success, and also not to get too caught up in failure. Um, I think that's absolutely true. And I feel that's what it's done for myself over the 40 years. It's 42 actually, but it's really.
But who's counting?
but who's counting? But it really does help in practical life. And I think the evolution, as you say, of a practice like that needs to ultimately come into your own practical life, of your career, your family, the things you're interested in.
Yeah.
And it's, helped me develop my interests in music, because I play the piano as well, and I love playing Mozart and Bach in particular. A little bit of Haydn from time to time, and that's always been an enjoyable talent to have. And again, in playing the piano, I found that I get to a different level of stillness and love. So when I really know a piece, and you get through the technical bits and work out where your fingers have to go, and you work out a little bit on the interpretation, and then you suddenly let go completely, and it's playing by itself, just like the mantra sounds in meditation, and it's absolutely happening by itself, and you're almost simply the onlooker. Then it really is streaming from your heart with enormous amounts of love, and that's true. And that you can see that with the very great pianists. It's not just a performance, it's not just technical, it literally comes from their heart, and it just flows into the audience, and you absolutely experience that. And when you experience the opposite from a pianist that's simply, say, working from their head or their mind or whatever, then it's very palpable as well. So
Wow.
so I think that evolution is really important, and it has to go
Yeah.
into the things you do and the things that you love.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, you are the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to meditation, because there's been so many gold nuggets there. And in terms of, you've really covered the question of overcoming the challenges, and I don't want to dwell on it too much now, because we've got special treats, Sanskrit chanting to end, which is beautiful in itself. Gary, you're coming back. I'm inviting you to come back, and we'll talk more about meditation and Sanskrit.
Happy to.
But the that decision that you were going to overcome the challenges, and just that persistence and that decision, that resolution to do that, really overcomes everything. And then how the meditation has influenced, improved, uplifted and infused every part of your life, from your relationships to your interests, such as I know music, you play Mozart so beautifully and so masterfully. It's wonderful. And, all these things come together, and the basis of it is this meditation, which is really the master key to the soul. So on that point, before we run out of time, we're going to chant some Sanskrit for you, which is always a real treat. And not our chanting, but hearing the Sanskrit. And if you want to know more about Damayanti for your soul, go to my website, which is damayanti.store. And there's all sorts of information there on how to get my book, and previous shows, podcast archives are there, and all things to do with Sanskrit that I can talk to you about. And you can also listen to this show again, because the podcast will be linked up there. So Gary, thank you. Before we get into the Sanskrit, and the time's running out, thank you for joining me today. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk about meditation, the master key for your soul.
It's been a pleasure, Sarah.
I'm going to chant a short prayer, and then Gary's going to chant. So my prayer is the universal prayer for everyone. May all be happy. May all be free of disease. May all see what is uplifting, and may no one suffer misery of any sort. May peace and peace and peace be everywhere. Om sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Over to you, Gary.
Yajjagrato duramudayati daivan tadu suptasya tatai vaiti durangamam jyoti shang jyoti rekantan me manah Shiva sankalpamastu.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Thank you for spending time with me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. To find out more about Damayanti, or to get my book, Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, or to purchase my range of beautiful spiritual jewelry, go to my website, damayanti.store. That's DAMAYANTI.store. Damayanti.store. See you next time.